This is a sci-fi story I wrote. It is an adventure of a curious explorer. The story is called Found in Space, Lost in Time. I will be myself narrating the story, and I hope you found it as exciting as entertaining as I did while writing this. Chapter 1. The Legacy begins. Planet Mars in the year 2700 AD became a human colony and a rich mining planet for valuable metals and minerals. The planet was terraformed through the 22nd century using domes built first from the dust and rocks on the surface, with the addition of limited resources brought from Earth on the first ships. These oxygen and nitrogen encapsulating domes were later built from high-strength, ultra-thin glass laminates manufactured from the silica found on Mars and bonded with the first mass-produced Martian adhesive polymers. Through this process and throughout the 23rd century, several cities were established on the surface. By building 1 kilometer diameter half-spheres on the surface of Mars, the planet had enough oxygen to construct a settlement the size of Italy. It took humanity 400 years to reach that scale, while at the same time many of these domes became mostly mines to help humanity gather enough resources and expand to other planets. The first human settlement was humorously called Plan B by the first ships that landed on the Red Planet in the year 2040. It was later called PB-1. The first settlement there grew into a city that eventually became the poorest city, left to the less wealthy to inhabit, while other settlements with more mineral resources nearby grew for centuries and became richer and more densely populated mining cities. PB-1 became a relatively less maintained city, open for any visitor and cheap for earthly tourism. On PB-1, Sotsi was naturally born to a humble family in the year 2733. His society of settlers belonged to the Balnassias, a religion of minimalism, energy preservation, and circular existence founded on the Book of Balna. The book was discovered in 2200 while miners were excavating resources to expand their first settlement on Mars. It was a very shocking thing to find a book on another planet. Some thought it was planted by one of the first astronauts who landed on Mars. Others thought it was a completely made-up story. And the rest read the book and agreed with the fundamental principles it described. These few, back then, thought that they would honor the book. What became the Balnassiers is a small group on Mars that never tried to preach their beliefs but were always appreciated by others. They only did deeds of good. They conserved energy, reused their belongings as much as possible, and taught their young the importance of labor and skill sharing. These concepts worked well for a new planet with limited resources. The Balnassiers were believers in the renewal of matter, energy, and soul. The core spiritual component of their religion is the existence of two gods, Bel-Nazu and Bel-Hurs. These gods maintained the flow of matter and energy in the universe, and ensured the continuous renewal of matter and soul. Sotsi was meant to learn all traditions well kept by a monk-like society on another planet, a unique upbringing for an age when humanity is preparing to explore and settle beyond the solar system. From a young age, Sotsi was immersed in the traditions of his family. His childhood was marked not only by the usual games and learning of a young boy, but also by deep spiritual and cultural teachings. Among these, the crafting of the shoes was a fundamental rite of passage. It was made from the finest white linen and soles of sturdy oak wood with a layer of oak cork on top. These shoes were more than mere footwear. They were a symbol of one's readiness to step into the cycles of life and death, a concept deeply ingrained in Balnasir's philosophy. The materials chosen are considered the gift of nature, and the Balnasirs made sure to grow oak trees and plant flax around them, adding green and blue colors to the red planet. Children were taught how to take care of the trees and plant the flax. They helped their fathers cut the oak branches into wood planks and shape the cork. Young Balnasirs helped their mothers through a meticulous long process to make linen cloth. The linen making process consisted of planting and growing flax with regular irrigation, harvesting, and then retting, a process that loosens the fibers. The retted flax is dried and then crushed to separate the fibers from the woody stem. The fibers are spun into yarn. The yarn is woven into linen fabric. For Sotsi, each stitch and each layer of linen was a layer of his growing understanding. In their tradition, the mother teaches the making of linen as a symbol of warmth and protection, and the father teaches the making of the soul of hardwood as a symbol of strength and stability, with the layer of cork symbolizing resilience and adaptation. The preparation of cork was not a simple process. Cork is harvested from the bark of cork oak trees. It is carefully stripped by hand without harming the tree. The harvested bark is then dried for several months. After drying, the cork is boiled to soften it and increase its elasticity. Finally, the cork is cut into shoe soles. Following tradition, by the age of 16, each Balnasir was meant to make an onk shoe in 3 days with guidance from the parents. Sotsi was excited to finally have the shoe representing his journey and be accepted as a full practitioner of the religion. The white linen shoe was ready, right before the Nuwand festival. The Nuwand festival is a vibrant event that draws the entire community together. It is a celebration that marks the cyclical nature of existence, symbolized by the changing seasons and the celestial movements. Sotsi's first participation in Nuwand was a defining moment in his life. The festival was held in the Grand Wasa Hall, a magnificent structure at the heart of their community, renowned for its architectural beauty and spiritual significance. The Book of Balna describes that existence is based on simple cycles of energy and soul renewal that govern the matter around us. Only a few forces in the universe can work against the chaos of entropy, among them life itself, as it allows an ordered construction of matter. The religion that developed from the book could be described as a minimal religion. As the traditions are few, there is no central figure to the book, and there is one short prayer to be said when a Balnasir is creating, reusing, or even birthing a new life. Even when later low-gravity pets were genetically made for life on Mars, at each birthing of pups, the Balnasirs said, "From the depths of decay and the shadow of death, we find renewal. To Belnazu and Belhurs, we give thanks for the endless cycle that sustains us." The Wasa Hall was more than just a building. It was a portal to the divine, designed with 13 grand roads leading to it. Each road was a metaphor for the different paths of life, converging at a common destination. The Balnasirs believed that humans on Mars were the first step for humanity to expand into the cosmos, spreading life and structural arrangement, which in their belief brings order to the universe. The hall was a huge cube with 500-meter sides and a pyramid on top. It had an opening in the center that allowed visitors to see a focused spot in space, occasionally having the sun right in the center when Mars was properly aligned. The base of the hall was an inverted pyramid with 4 stairs leading to the center. At the center, a glowing fire constantly burned, a fire that could melt stones in minutes. That was the pit of offerings. At that pit, Balnasirs threw 1 item each. That offering at the Nuwan festival symbolized giving back matter and energy to the universe, for the gods to renew and reuse. At the Nuwan festival, each Balnasir wore white and black clothing and the omk they made when they were 16 years old. They carried that 1 offering and marched to the Wasa Hall through the 13 main streets. They converged around the building, made 1 rotation around it, threw the item in the pit, said their prayer, made another rotation around the building, and left along one of the 13 roads. This tradition itself reflected how the gods gather matter and energy. They burn through what the Book of Balna describes as the Black Tamul, and then redistribute matter to where matter should be and souls to the realm of infinity. The Black Tamul in the book is described as places in the universe where Belnazu uses high matter manipulation power and combines it with the energy of life emanating from Belhurs. With her help, the cycle continues, and the matter is reshaped, the souls are freed, and existence continues. For unknown reasons, the details of the Black Tamul and the realm of infinity are not well described in the book, but it appears that maybe humans shall not know more. Sotsi's deep understanding and respect for his heritage eventually led his community to vote him several times as a muftis, a position of great honor and responsibility. His omkshu turned more and more grey after each Nuwan festival. He was proud of himself, being valued as a member and respected as a devoted believer in his late 20s. As muftis, Sotsi was tasked with leading the ceremonies during Nuwant. He performed these duties with a profound sense of devotion and precision. He always glanced at his omk and hoped it would turn black after ages, as his hair turned grey and then white. His omk itself would be thrown into the pit of offerings at the age of 61, to be again replaced by a new white omk shu. Sotsi was not a tall person, nor did he have a particularly unique face. What was instantly noticed about him was his calm and soothing voice. He exuded confidence and brought calm and wisdom to any gathering. He was interested in everything in the universe, sometimes wondering where the gods are, and other times thinking what path must he take to discover the world and appreciate the cycle of life. Sotsi, more than anything else, was interested in the mystery of space, the universe, and how it all works in balance. This is chapter 2 of the story Found in Space, Lost in Time. The title of the chapter is The Journey of Knowledge. Sotsi's city, PB1, was open to knowledge and culture and hosted many scientific conferences. Sotsi had different interests in his 20s and a great talent for mathematics and physics. He wanted to know more about the universe through the inspiration of his religion. His city had good science learning facilities, places where different realities could be simulated through programmed worlds, and learners could build physical systems that deviate from reality. Through that, he observed universes collapse and learned the value of every variable in the equations of the universe, starting with space, time, and the fundamental forces. PB1, being again the lowest cost area on Mars, became the most cost-effective place to build space observatories and Universal Data Collectors, UDC. Universal Data Collectors were the latest technology that humans built. They were telescopes capable of magnifying most of the electromagnetic spectrum from gamma to radio wavelength with immense resolution and filtering capabilities. Not only that, UDCs incorporated the earliest versions of high-energy neutrino beams, which allowed the direct scanning of most solid objects surrounding the solar system. Scientists in the 22nd century discovered that neutrino beams could bounce off dark matter and primordial black holes. UDCs allowed the discovery of several dark matter pockets near the solar system, which made traveling outside the solar system nearly impossible with the technology of the time. UDCs also discovered several primordial black holes a few light years away from the Sun. SOTC became obsessed with those objects in space with unknown properties. No one really understood how they were formed or how they remained in existence for billions of years. After working for many years, day and night, and publishing finding after finding, SOTC managed to get a highly regarded position at one of the UDC centers. Through his constant scans, he discovered a black hole only a thousandth of a light year from the Sun, something he had dreamt of and concentrated all his efforts and knowledge to attain. The black hole was located behind the Kuiper belt, and it was difficult to learn more about it without building the next UDC there or beyond. With the hope of studying a black hole up close for the first time in human history, SOTC managed to obtain a significant fund referred to in the scientific community as a helioscale fund. It was meant to identify a location for a UDC near the Kuiper belt and build it within 15 years. He managed to convince the funding board members of the importance of understanding black holes by having a clear project plan for the next phase of exploration and solid arguments prepared. First, using human curiosity as a drive, we would get to understand how universes form. Where does the matter go? What exactly happens in a singularity? Is anything besides Hawking radiation escaping the black hole? Then, second, he used the need for resources and the wealth argument. What if we can harness energy from the black hole? Or we can use the immense gravitational pull to produce materials that could only be formed in such conditions. Like all those theorized metal alloys and organic molecules we see in simulations that would only form in a high gravity environment. We have a chance for the first time to test these predictions at such high gravity levels without the unreliable, limited centrifuges. Third, knowing the human instinct very well, he tapped into our instinct of fear, the fear of the unknown. What if such a black hole is a threat? What if it grows exponentially and engulfs the solar system within a millennia? Should we not be prepared? Should we not at least know? With funding secured, SOTC decided to travel to the planet Stanislae, which historically was called Pluto. Through space manipulation, humans assisted Pluto in building mass by collecting Kuiper belt objects, mainly rock and ice floating along Pluto's path. Pluto became a planet with many valuable minerals and metals, and thus building a UDC was not an impossible mission there. The new planet name is a combination of Stanley, meaning the collector of stones, and Stanislaw, meaning becoming glory. Scientists at the time, in the year 2400, had maintained the historical records of Pluto's story. Better maintained was their humor, and thus the second competing name for the planet was Stanley D.J. Tyson, referring to the 21st century scientist who often reminded the public that Pluto was no longer a planet. SOTC needed to prepare to leave Mars for the first time, leave his community, and even harder for him, leave his family, the people who taught him to be humble, to be curious about everything, and to be thankful for the life he has. They gave him a lot of knowledge and wisdom, and now it was time for him to seek more knowledge and give back to humankind. Traveling to Stanislav to start a decades-long plan would keep him away from his society. He would have to observe Nuant from far away for the next 5 cycles, or more. Some of the friends he made over the years would be traveling with him on this journey, which gave him some solace with familiar faces. Many other friends he would have to leave behind and only meet in holographic projections. Besides all that, he would be missing the wise words of the elders and the philosophical discussions he often had with his community. The funds, unfortunately, were not enough to complete a UDC to the scale Sotsi wanted. But Sotsi was a smart man. As soon as his fleet arrived to Stanislav, he built a metal refining station with the first batch of funds that he received, and through the sales of rare metals, he was able to build a massive UDC and even fund a group to work with him on designing the first ship that could reach the black hole in a few years. Sotsi was so immersed in science and technology and his ambition that he drifted away from his religion. He was far from his community and had only new things to build, forgetting about any concept of renewal or reuse. It was all about exploitation and exploration. As he saw the world through a much wider lens, he thought a life of peace and prosperity could be achieved through the pursuit of knowledge. This is chapter 3 of the story Found in Space, Lost in Time. The title of the chapter is Discovery of Nosha. After years of work, Sotsi mined resources, brought more and more robots to build, expanded the team of scientists, and constructed the first black hole orbiter that's meant to be unmanned, and he named it Hawk 1. There were many challenges to overcome and technologies to develop. Traveling at higher speeds than ever before, avoiding antimatter pockets, maneuvering on optimal path, shielding the hardware, and more importantly for later, shielding the crew. He gained leading-edge knowledge of ship design and managed through the physics simulator to solve all expected problems to reach the black hole. Multiple discoveries and inventions by his team led to the development of a magnetic shield able to protect the ship from antimatter pockets. An onboard short-range UDC allowed the detection of larger space anomalies to avoid along the path. A fully independent intelligence system was designed to autonomously navigate the ship, send back reports on the best path, and attempt to orbit the black hole on arrival. Hawk 1 was launched as soon as it was completed, and the arrival time was calculated to be 3 years. Messages kept arriving back to Stanislav, with every milestone successfully passed, and a stable orbit was confirmed 6 years later. Sotsi rejoiced. Hawk 2 was ready with a further enhanced UDC, a higher travel speed, and a double-shielded human crew cabin. Decades had passed, but decades were no longer as long as they used to be for natural human longevity. Sotsi, with the latest commercialized genetic modifications, had an expected life of a few centuries. Sotsi embarked on the first human journey to a black star, taking with him as many resources as possible to build an additional ship in orbit and study the black hole for a year. The journey was to take 8 months, enough time to work further on the design devices and technologies to run measurements from orbit. The core of Sotsi's ambitious project was the fusion-powered beam machine, a sophisticated device engineered to harness and accelerate a concentrated beam of high-energy neutrinos to near light speeds. This powerful beam was aimed directly into the swirling chaos of the black hole, designed to penetrate its impenetrable darkness and extract physical properties from within. The theory was audacious, positing that black holes, often thought of as mere gravitational sinks, could also be sources of unknown forms of energy, and even matter that could exist within the singularity. As they neared the black hole, Sotzi's team prepared for orbiting automated maneuvers, scanned the black hole's gravity field, and simulated billions of orbit paths, attempting to find the most stable orbit with the highest chance of matter or energy ejection proximity. At the same time, they calibrated the beam machine for the highest extraction chance. With the orbiting successful, Hawk 2 became the first manned mission to orbit a black hole, and at a proximity that was previously thought impossible. With everything set and ready, the day of the experiment was charged with palpable tension. Scientists and engineers from various disciplines gathered in the control room, their eyes fixed on the monitors displaying the beam's penetration into the black hole's event horizon. Sotzi, calm yet visibly tense, supervised the activation of the beam. As the machine buzzed to life, sending a stream of accelerated neutrinos into the cosmic maelstrom, the readings on their instruments began to spike unexpectedly. The team watched in awe as the beam seemed to interact with the black hole in unforeseen ways, throwing out a shimmering, luminescent essence. As the essence hit the external shield of the ship, it turned into a solid matter, resembling exactly the metal that the shield was made of. After collection, it was confirmed that it was indeed the same metal, which defied their scientific understanding. On a second trial, a block of polymer was shot into the essence, and once in contact, the essence mutated into the same polymer. They had discovered nausea, a substance that appeared to be the physical embodiment of the mythical energy described in the ancient Balnasir's text. Nausea was described as an essence of matter without form, but it could be converted into whatever the gods willed. Of course, the ancient texts might not describe the science behind the phenomenon, but at least the observation showed that such an essence existed in the universe. Sotzi's discovery was exhilarating, but also deeply troubling. The existence of nausea brought with it a multitude of scientific and philosophical questions. Sotzi found himself drawn back to the ancient Balnasir scriptures, poring over texts that spoke of nausea as a sacred essence collected by the gods from the waste of the universe, rejuvenated through celestial processes governed by the deities Belnazu and Belhurs. These scriptures describe nausea as a fundamental component in the cycle of cosmic creation and destruction, a substance capable of influencing the material world. The parallels between these ancient beliefs and his scientific findings were striking, and Sotzi began to wonder if science was merely catching up with truth the Balnasirs had known centuries ago. The implications of wielding nausea were profound. Sotzi convened meetings with his peers aboard the station, presenting his findings and seeking counsel on the ethical dimensions of their research. The debates that ensued were heated and multifaceted, touching on the responsibilities of scientists to their subjects, the potential hazards of interacting with cosmic forces, and the moral implications of using such power. Nausea would allow them to produce the rarest of materials in quantities never before believed possible. Materials that could power ship engines and shields that were only imagined. The financial potential as a mining source was huge. Many entities would fight to obtain control of such an extraction method, and it would be the ultimate mining technology. As Sotsi grappled with these conflicts, he realized that his discovery of Nosha was not just a scientific milestone, but also a spiritual crossroad. The choices he made going forward would define not only his legacy, but potentially the future of humanity's interaction with the cosmos. Determined to proceed with caution and respect for both the scientific and spiritual implications of his work, Sotsi set up a comprehensive study program to explore Nosha under controlled conditions, hoping to unravel its secrets without unleashing its full potential prematurely. This careful approach marked a new phase in his journey, balancing the thrill of discovery with the weight of his responsibilities. This is chapter 4 of the story Found in Space, Lost in Time. The chapter is entitled The Ethical Dilemma. The revelation of Nosha's extraction not only heralded a scientific breakthrough, but also ignited a firestorm of ethical debates and spiritual introspection. As the news spread throughout the scientific community and among the Malnaseers, Sotsi found himself at the epicenter of a profound moral quandary that threatened to split his community and the scientific world. The Malnaseers community was deeply divided. Some viewed Sotsi's experiments as dangerous overreach, meddling with sacred energies that humans were not meant to control. This first group, the traditionalists, viewed these developments with deep apprehension and growing alarm. They held that some realms were meant to remain untouched, and that the Malnaseers' role was not to harness the powers of the gods, but to live in harmony with them. They feared that tampering with the very fabric of cosmic energies could disrupt the delicate balance of the universe. This faction saw Sotsi's actions as hubris, a dangerous overreach that could invite catastrophe, not just on a cosmic scale, but also spiritually, potentially severing their connection with the divine. Others, however, argued that Sotsi's discoveries were a fulfillment of their cultural destiny, a divine opportunity to understand and perhaps meet the cosmic entities their ancestors had worshipped. This second group, which could be termed the progressives, was exhilarated by Sotsi's discovery. They argued that this was a manifestation of their destiny to not just speculate about the divine, but to reach out and touch the realms of the gods. They saw Sotsi's work as a bridge between mortal and divine, long held in their lore. This faction believed that advancing this research could lead to a new era where humans could potentially converse with celestial beings and perhaps even ascend to higher states of existence. The scientific debate was equally intense. Ethicists, physicists, and cosmologists convened in numerous conferences and forums, some celebrating the potential for human advancement and others warning of unprecedented risks. The possibility of manipulating cosmic energies opened up endless opportunities for energy, medicine, and material science. However, the potential for abuse and unknown long-term consequences made many in the scientific community cautious about fully endorsing Sotsi's further explorations. Caught between these opposing views, Sotsi faced his internal struggles. The joy of discovery and the thrill of scientific progress were now shadowed by the immense responsibilities these brought. He found himself revisiting the ancient scriptures, seeking guidance in the wisdom of those who had once walked the path aligned with the stars and the cosmic forces. Sotsi spent long nights in meditation and discussion with both factions of the Malnaseers, absorbing their concerns and hopes. As a leader and a pioneer, Sotsi recognized that his decisions would have far-reaching implications. He began to formulate a plan that would hopefully bridge the gap between the two factions of his community. He proposed a new phase of the project. First, to limit the scope of extraction, and second, to keep secret the exact tools and process of extraction until better understanding and proper control of the phenomena. This is chapter 5 of the story Found in Space, Lost in Time. The title of the chapter is Harnessing Zah. As the effects of nausea were stabilized and the dialogue began to develop between the various stakeholders within the scientific and Balnasir's communities, Sotsi pressed forward with his pioneering research. Sotsi slowly amassed more and more special materials through experimentation with nausea. Knowing that this process required significant amount of energy, he converted the first quantities of essence into fuel that powered the beam. With careful planning and calculation, he extracted and converted materials useful to further expand the ship, develop the tools, and increase the energy level of the beam. With a much stronger beam and unlimited energy resources, Sotsi experimented with different beam energy levels. He tested pulse forms and tried a broad range of frequencies. Seeking to maximize nausea extraction, he stumbled upon another essence that he thought must be only fiction. Another form of essence was purged out of the black hole at a low pulse frequency between 1 and 1.67 Hz. It was very bright, emitting a wide spectrum of light, appearing blindingly white to the eyes. It touched the objects shot at it, but did not convert to any matter. It also reflected any measurement beams shot at it without providing any useful scientific reading. Sotsi decided to take a shuttle and build an onboard scanner to attempt to scan the essence up close. He volunteered to navigate close alone, knowing that no one else dared to join in such a risky maneuver. As he neared the expelled white essence with his shuttle, the light quickly accelerated toward him and entered his body. Sotsi was shocked, overwhelmed, and ecstatic. Yes, he had made another discovery, far beyond what nausea is. While nausea interacts with matter and creates more of it, the white essence is a far greater phenomenon. It is Zah. Zah is described in the ancient text as the lifeblood of the gods, used to sustain their immortal existence. Zah promised to unlock capabilities beyond human comprehension. It is absorbed by the soul to enhance the energy of life and allow awakening. What kind of awakening? Sotsi was unsure. What he absorbed was nothing but a sparse speck of Zah. Nevertheless, the effects were immediate. As he returned to the ship, he refused to describe what he saw and felt. It just went into the shuttle and disappeared, he told his crew. Maybe it was just energy with no significant power. However, Sotsi saw a similar faint, white light emanating from each human who stood in front of him. Zah allowed him to see through the body and glimpse into the soul. He had to hide that from his crew. Maybe he was hallucinating. Maybe he would be dismissed as the expedition leader and chief scientist in this quest. He requested to repeat the pulses that led to Zah extraction, calling it the faint white energy. Maybe he could approach it again and attempt to harness it. On several attempts, the white energy disappeared into his shuttle. He asked his crew to focus again on nausea extraction as it led to usable results.
He knew he was now able to hear the thoughts of his crew around him. They were mostly complaining that they were wasting time and resources on the white energy. Nausea could be sold. Nausea could bring them riches. With an excited crew back to the extraction of riches, they started collecting nausea. Sotsi, with just his thoughts, managed to attract small quantities of nausea to him and shape it into any matter he thought of. He realized that Zah gave him the ability to manipulate matter with thought. His curious mind was excited to do more. He was not afraid of consequences. He felt power no other human being ever had. He felt like a god. Quietly for several months, he built with nausea another extraction station by the power of thought on the other side of the black hole. He used that to expand his storage of nausea without limitation and convert more and more of it to maximize his beam power for Zah extraction. However, Sotsi made a mistake. His station on the other side grew so large that the light emitted from it wrapped around the black hole, and at the edge of the event horizon, it reached the other side. The crew was shocked. Where did the other ship come from? What was it doing? As they panicked, they contacted the Universal Council. With haste, the Universal Council sent forward its battleships to the black hole to declare the area under military control and ban all energy extraction, fearing that the situation was not under control. Sotsi sensed the fear in the crew, reaching levels of terrorizing panic. As most of them wanted to leave, Sotsi quickly built a second ship and with the power of thought teleported all his crew to it. It was twice the speed of Hawk 2 and was directly heading back to Stanislav for safety. From that moment, Sotsi was seen as a traitor, an unknown agent working for an unknown group. In the crew's mind and the Universal Council's, Sotsi had taken over the extraction process with the help of an entity with advanced teleportation technology and a massive ship hiding behind the black hole. Sotsi at that moment knew he had limited time to extract more and more Zah and as much nausea as possible before the ships arrived. He realized that he did not want anyone to be hurt, neither his crew nor anyone coming for him in the battleships. With that small initial amount of Zah, he was able to strongly feel the emotions of the souls and developed a strong empathy for the living. And now, with more and more Zah absorbed, he becomes more capable than he knows. In his own panic, he realized that one of his crew members had been teleported outside the ship. With a far larger concentration of Zah, he was able to revive him and teleport him thousands of kilometers inside the traveling ship. He quickly realized how much stronger his power had become. More control over the souls of the living and space perception and precision across thousands of kilometers. He could already see the battleships, still millions of kilometers away, but he knew exactly how much time he had. Whatever power he now had could bring people back from the dead, cure any disease, and move mountains with just a thought. Anything he dreamed of, he could make real. This development intensified debates around Sotsi's work. The Balnassiers were further split. The progressives saw this as a validation of their belief in Sotsi's destined role to bridge the mortal and the divine. In contrast, the traditionalists felt vindicated in their fear that such power could not only disrupt the cosmic balance, but also attract dire repercussions from other human factions. Sotsi himself grappled with the dual nature of his discoveries. Zah while a source of almost limitless potential, also posed significant risks. Its ability to alter reality was bound by no ethical constraints. Its use could easily lead to scenarios where the very essence of human and cosmic existence might be irrevocably changed.
This is chapter 6 of the story Found in Space, Lost in Time. The chapter is entitled Ascension. As Sotsi delved deeper into the realms of Nosha and Za, the effects of these potent cosmic substances began to manifest not just in the experiments but within himself. The constant exposure to Za had unforeseen consequences. It was slowly being absorbed into his body, altering his physical and mental capabilities in profound ways. Sotsi discovered that he was beginning to harness the ability to manipulate matter with mere thought, a direct result of the Zah he had been extracting. Sotsi's transformation marked a pivotal turn in his cosmic journey. With each passing day, he felt the soul within him resonate more strongly with the energies of the black hole, enhancing his connection to the universe's hidden forces. The Zah he extracted amplified this effect, bestowing upon him abilities that blurred the line between science and what many would consider magic. The power to manipulate matter with his mind opened up unprecedented possibilities. Sotsi began to think bigger, not just in terms of scientific achievements, but in the sheer scale of his engineering feats. Within the confines of the Hawk Station, he set about constructing a new machine, one far larger and more capable than any before. This device was designed to harness Zah more efficiently, accelerating his experiments to a pace that could have taken decades under normal circumstances. With his team safely en route to the nearest planet, Sotsi turned his full attention to harnessing Zah. At first, the isolation did not bother him. If anything, it allowed him to focus without the moral complications his experiments posed for others. He expanded his machine, creating an intricate network of devices that pulsed with the power of Nosha and glowed with the essence of Zah. However, as the machines thrummed with energy, Sotsi suddenly and unexpectedly felt the weight of his solitude. The vastness of space around him mirrored the internal expanse he now navigated alone. With each manipulation of matter, each bending of physical laws, he questioned the path he had chosen. The power was exhilarating. In the silence of the station, Sotsi had time to reflect on the broader implications of his work. The ability to manipulate reality itself was a godlike power, one that could easily consume him if left unchecked. He pondered the teachings of the Balnasirs, the warnings of the traditionalists, and the enthusiastic support of the progressives. Each perspective offered insights into the responsibilities that came with such power. Sotsi was resolved to proceed with caution, balancing his scientific curiosity with the wisdom garnered from his heritage. As he prepared for the next phase of his experiments, he was fully aware of the fleet approaching, a reminder of the impending challenges and the inevitable confrontation that awaited. This is chapter 7 of the story Found in Space, Lost in Time. The chapter is entitled
Celestial Encounters. In the boundless void of space, aboard the Hawk Station, Sotsi's journey into the unknown continued. His experiments, once grounded in pure scientific curiosity, had evolved into something far more profound. As he harnessed and accumulated vast amounts of Zah, the essence that once belonged to the realm of gods, Sotsi began to sense the presence of otherworldly beings, entities that his ancestors had perhaps spoken about. These sensations were unlike anything Sotsi had experienced before. They were subtle at first, a mere whisper at the edge of his consciousness. But as his collection of Zah grew, so did the clarity of these presences. Sotsi felt as if two beings, distinct yet elusive, were watching over his actions. They exerted a gentle but firm influence, limiting his ability to siphon Zah whenever he neared a threshold that seemed to invite their intervention. This celestial interference was both awe-inspiring and unnerving. However, there was no direct communication, no voices or visions. Only the unmistakable feeling of being observed and occasionally restrained by forces beyond his understanding. As he started to sense fear, he also sensed the power of far more capable beings. He decided to broadcast his findings to the Universal Council and the scientific community. He feared that his experiment might end up killing him and that all his work would be lost. Meanwhile, back on Mars, the Balnasir's community was in turmoil. The news of Sotsi's encounters with what might be divine entities spread rapidly, fueling the fires of debate among his people. The community, already split, found new reasons to argue over the implications of Sotsi's work. The progressives viewed these developments with excitement and vindication. They argued that Sotsi was on the verge of achieving what no human had before: direct interaction with the cosmic gods. This faction believed more fervently than ever that Sotsi's work should continue, that it was humanity's destiny to rise to the level of the gods and understand the universe's deepest secrets. Conversely, the traditionalists saw these signs as dire warnings. They believed that the celestial interventions were clear indications that Sotsi was trespassing into sacred territories, meddling with forces that humans were meant to revere from afar, not harness or provoke. They feared that his actions could lead to a cosmic imbalance or attract worthwhil responses from the gods. Alone on his station, surrounded by the machinery of his creation, Sotsi pondered his next moves. The sensations of the deities made him reconsider the scope of his work. Was he truly prepared to meet these cosmic entities? Were the potential benefits worth the risks? These questions haunted his thoughts. Sotsi realized that his next steps needed to be taken with great care. He decided to temporarily halt the active extraction of Zah to observe the reactions of the celestial beings. If they thought to communicate or intervene less when he wasn't actively harnessing Zah, perhaps he could find a way to interact with them that respected their boundaries and the cosmic order. This is Chapter 8 of the story Found in Space, Lost in Time. The chapter is entitled Escape. As the cosmos sprawled endlessly around him, Sotsi's existence within the confines of the Hawk Station had become a solitary quest toward an unprecedented understanding of universal energies. His interactions with Nosha and Zah had granted him powers that seemed boundless, Yet these very powers now faced restrictions imposed by unseen celestial entities. Alone and empowered, Sotzi continued to expand his machinery, his station becoming a labyrinth of devices pulsating with the energies of Nosha and the machines and all the Zah in him. Each piece of equipment was a testament to his genius, designed to harness and manipulate these cosmic substances on an ever greater scale. Yet, as his abilities grew, so did the constraints placed upon them. Sotzi noticed that the flow of Zah he was able to extract had begun to fluctuate. More disturbingly, he sensed that some of the Zah he had already gathered was being drawn away from him, siphoned off by the mysterious entities that had made their presence felt. This realization came as a shock, shattering his perception of control. The entities, which he had felt as distant watchers, were now active interveners, directly influencing his capacity to harness the cosmic energies. The timing could not have been worse. The fleet sent by the Human Council to halt his experiments was mere hours from arriving. Sotzi understood that his groundbreaking work, teetering on the brink of cosmic revolution, was under threat, not just from the entities, but also from his kind. The dual pressure squeezed him from both ends, leaving him cornered and desperate. In his isolation, Sotzi's mind raced through possibilities. His profound understanding of time and space, combined with the manipulative powers granted by Zah, led him to conceive a daring plan. Escape through time itself. If the entities and the incoming fleet were to prevent him from continuing his work in the present, he would simply go to the past. There, away from the restrictions of his current timeline and the threats looming over him, he could perhaps find a new path. In his mind, gods never needed to understand all the mechanisms of the universe around them. They have no real understanding of physics and technology, and may not be aware of the concept of time travel. Maybe if he hides in the past, the battleships will never reach him, and maybe neither will the gods. Sotzi set to work immediately, using the advanced technologies at his disposal. He recalibrated the station's core system to create a temporal gateway. This was no small feat. The theories of time travel were speculative at best, and the risks were immense. However, his current abilities, fueled by the energies of Zah, allowed him to manipulate the necessary variables with precision. As the fleet's arrival became imminent, Sotzi initiated the sequence to activate the temporal gateway. The station hummed with a power it had never held before, vibrating with the tension of bending time. Sotzi felt the gaze of the celestial entities intensify, their silent disapproval echoing through the cosmos. But it was too late for them to intervene. Just as the first ships of the fleet came into view, a blinding light enveloped the Hawk station. Sotzi, at the heart of the storm of energy he had unleashed, focused on a time in the past. A quieter era, one where he could blend in, far removed from cosmic deities and interstellar politics. As the light faded, Sotzi found himself adrift, not in space, but in time. The Hawk station was gone, replaced by the blue skies and the green horizons of an ancient Earth. Here, in this past world, Sotzi knew he had a chance to start anew, to explore the potentials of Zah and Nosha without the oversight of celestial beings or the threats of human interference. Having traveled back in time, Sotzi found himself in an era starkly different from the one he had left. The absence of advanced technology and the simplicity of life were in stark contrast to the complexities of his previous existence among the stars. It was a world where the celestial beings he had once sensed so keenly seemed absent, with neither developed science to understand or manipulate the elements as he had done. In this new time, the concept of celestial entities influencing life through cosmic energies was unheard of. The beings that had once limited Sotsi's access to Zah were no longer a part of his daily reality. This was a world untouched by the complexities of time travel or the nuances of cosmic physics, governed by natural laws as understood through rudimentary science and abundant mysticism. Sotsi, armed with his deep knowledge and the Zah still resonating within him, began to integrate into this society. His advanced understanding of science and the universe was hidden behind the guise of a traveler with unique but vague origins. He connected easily with the people. His empathy was enhanced by the human essences carried within the Zah. It made him unusually attuned to their suffering and joys, bridging any gap left by time or culture. As he settled into the simpler life, Sotsi found ways to use his abilities discreetly. He wrote parts of his story and understanding of the gods and hid it in a book on the surface of Mars. A new chapter of his life began, and it began through a humble wedding he was attending. Sensing that the joy of the event would not be complete, he turned the water in the cups slowly into a dark red wine.